20 miles west of Atlanta in Lithia Springs flows Georgia's longest creek, the Sweetwater. This tract of wilderness makes up almost 3,000 acres of one of the state's beautiful parks. The water of the Sweetwater rushes over the rocks, long ago having erased the footsteps of the ancients, those unnamed tribes of natives who found rest along its banks. The Spanish left their marks on more solid ground. Long forgotten are the Spaniard trails in search of treasures in uncharted land. History abounds in the rocks. The water has its own story to tell, for it is the water that attracted travelers past and present. Beyond the creek, another kind of water flowed freely. Medicine Springs was a favored stop for both humans and animals. Wildlife still licked the salt patina that forms on the rocks surrounding the springs. The Indians believed the Great Spirit Manitou created the waters.
Depicted as both a human and as an animal, that he was a bird man.
According to Indian culture, spring waters were linked to their belief systems.
The spring itself could represent Mother Earth or a womb in Native American beliefs, and so since something is coming out of it, and you can obviously go into it, it is also a connection between this world and the underworld. Now we know that about Native Americans here in North Georgia because people like James Mooney and Swanton and some of the early ethnographers interviewed the Indians, and they told him that. So, you go over to that spring and you can go into the other world. You can go into the underworld.
I know the Indians were here long before the Spaniards, and they did a lot of things here because it was a healing spring. It was well protected by whoever, was in control of the land at the time.
If you wanted water, you can go right over to Sweetwater Creek. You can go, there are creeks all around here. Why come to this spring? Well, this spring had had three things going for it. These rocks, which is unusual. The fact that it's emanating from the ground with no source, and that it tastes different from the other water around here.
The healing properties were well known in Europe, so they recognized it as being such here. And plus it had the bromide water and the lithium water.
What you have here is an incredible, powerful place, I believe. At one time, it was a center of the belief system around here, of the local people.
We're going back in time. We're going back 5,000 years ago. Here we are, a place in Georgia that today is called Georgia. Here we are out in the open, and we are here at this massive temple. There's thousands of people walking down these stairs, coming to these springs. And as they walk down these ancient steps, they're bathing in these waters. And these are curative waters. These are people with ailments. They have liver problems. They have eye problems. They have stomach problems. Whatever ailment they have, they're coming here for cure. And when they bathe, they're baptized by the water in a way that they're healed. And then once they come here and they're healed, they then go back up into the temple. They talk to the wizards, the sorcerer, healers, that today we may call doctors. Today we may even call this ancient water temple a hospital of sorts. But keep in mind, this is over 5,000 years ago. The people are highly civilized that run this place and build this place, but there's literally hundreds of thousands, millions of primitives that journey to this temple for healing. And so that's what you have to visualize. You cannot visualize what you see today, but you have to understand that this was one of the holiest of places in North America because of its curative properties, because of the water, the magic of the water, the magic of the temple.
They probably took water from here and took it back to their village and used it in ritual, during ritual time. Same way with the carvings from these rocks. They probably came over here, and you won't find the reason, why have the village way over here, not way over here, but over here a quarter mile or whatever. Why didn't they just put the village right here? Well, because this was a sacred area. These rock piles that we find out in the woods, and these rock walls, and the old stone fort up in Tennessee, and all these places, effigy mounds and so forth, archaeologists have gone there for 100 years and dug around looking for artifacts. There's nothing there. In the very area where you have the sacred area, they didn't live there. It would be like us going and living in the church. You don't go live in the church. It's a place you go to contact the spirit world.
European colonization pushed the red man from the land, leading to the extinction of many Indian tribes, now completely forgotten.
They may have been the Yuchi Indians or the Hitchiti. Those are some of the Native American names. They lived kind of in West Georgia, over in Alabama. Those are the groups that were probably here. And of course, we don't know what they called themselves 3,000 or 4,000 years ago.
Two cultures emerged as the strongest native chiefdoms in Georgia. Legend says possession of the territory was decided by a lacrosse game. An 1825 Georgia survey map confirms the winner.
First name of the springs was Deer Lick, so named by the Creek and Cherokee Indians.
Chief Ama Canasta and his village of clansmen settled in this area. Ama Canasta is Cherokee for Sweetwater.
It could have been as much as a couple of hundred people. And then there would be outlying hamlets or smaller villages. This could have been the primary chiefdom, and there would be sub-chiefdoms or smaller villages around. People that had that belief system, whatever that belief system was with that group, could have numbered a couple of thousand people at one time. But the village itself, the primary village location, would have been, I'd say, a couple of hundred people, maybe 300 people at the most.
Large rocks near the springs form a natural amphitheater. They provided ample seating for tribal meetings or simple rest.
These outcroppings are part of the Appalachian mountain chain, starting in Newfoundland, continuing down the eastern United States into northern Georgia and to northern Alabama. They're in excess of 700 million years old, the oldest mountain chain in North America.
This is an incredibly powerful setup that fits right into their belief system. And you could take an indigenous person or a native person from any part of the world, practically Australia, the bush people there, the San people in South America, South Africa, people in South America. You could pluck them up and set them down in this setting right here, and point out the various aspects of this site, and it would fit right in with what they believe. It fits right in with what people have believed all around the world for a long time, and that's these. There again, these shamanistic belief systems, contact with the other world and that sort of thing, going into the spirit world.
Evidence suggests the site was sacred, ceremonial ground.
I know that there's one section over here called an altar rock. There again, it's a European description. You have to be careful about going over and calling something the altar rock. It's like going over and calling it the Chevrolet rock, because it immediately focuses you on that identification. I believe that it's a large cupule over there where they have been taking scrapings in order to be in contact with their ancestors.
Spanish conquistador Hernán de Soto traveled deep into the interior of Georgia in 1539, passing through the northwestern corner of the state. De Soto managed to miss a major gold vein in Dahlonega, possibly thwarting Spain's chance to establish a dominant stronghold in Georgia.
As they would come up the Chattahoochee River from Florida, from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, this was a good place to rest up for several days before they went into the mining regions, northeast and northwest up here.
The Spanish used rocks to mark important trailheads and campsites for future expeditions. Identifying rocks led the way to campsites where there would be water and natural shelter.
In an Indian attack, I'm sure to be in a good defendable position, to tell you the truth. This is a high spot here, and surely you'd have the advantage of having the high spot, especially if you had, the rifles, the muskets that they had, the arquebuses or whatever. And when there was a better access overland, they set up monuments at that point on the river or the stream, and gave you directions. A lot of this stuff out here are directional markers telling you what's here and what's there and what's actually at this point. Because, things change, landmarks change even just during seasons, A section of the river might look different in the spring than it does in the wintertime. So they set the rock monuments all on the Chattahoochee and all the major streams and rivers.
One unmistakable rock still stands sentry today. Frog Rock, 700 million years old, naturally shaped like a giant bullfrog.
The frog, I'm sure, was a natural rock formation, but they augmented it to look like a frog, to more look like a frog. And that meant water or spring. Later on, the frog became a symbol of the gold. There's a lot of confusion in that part, where if you see a whole frog, it means water. If you see just a head, it means gold.
This is done by humans, and this is a smiling tortoise head.
So, you know, you can't say with that one. It may be natural. But this, that's typical of Native Americans.
See the chin? He's the smaller part of a bigger bean.
A whole animal could have several symbols incorporated with it. There's some like this. There's some symbols out here which can only be seen standing up on another rock. Certain periods of the day, say between 11 and 1, when the sun's high overhead, a shadow form would appear, like hearts, or I've seen gourds that appear. And some are all-day symbols. There's a gourd on a spring down the roadways that stays all day long. It's just a shadow symbol of a gourd, and it points right to a spring head.
Rock carvings, of which there are many in Georgia. In fact, that's what I do. I record petroglyphic carvings here in Georgia in the southeast. You see pictures of animals, they look like animals. You see pictures of people, they look like people, stick figures and so forth.
The difference between a petroglyph, and I have to define that, and a petrograph is a petroglyph is normally an abstract image that conveys a concept. A petrograph is more in terms of a very sophisticated image that I relate to like a photo, and that it is done by highly sophisticated people. And when you talk about able to imbue it into stone, it becomes even more sophisticated, depending upon technique.
If there are markings on a rock, usually you've seen those markings somewhere else, and they don't look really fresh. A lot of rocks have been marked in historic times by people passing through, or vandalized, so to speak, and it's pretty easy to distinguish that.
How do you know you're not rock happy and you're seeing a real sign? Well, it's hard to know. Usually there's an indication someplace, a chisel mark, a hammer mark, it's propped up on another rock. There's 4 rocks right here that are obviously placed by someone. Look at it long. You can look at anything long enough and make it into something, but there's got to be an obvious mark, an obvious indication that this is done by a man and not by natural causes. Sometimes it's very hard to do. I've been guilty of being rock happy many times myself.
I'm very careful about associating treasure with any of these. First of all, there's been no treasure found. There's been rumors of it, but there's no documentation of any treasure found associated with petroglyphs. Second of all, you get people that will go out there and vandalize it. There have been petroglyph sites in North Georgia that have been dynamited. The people have taken bulldozers and dug them up. People have taken wreckers that you pull cars with and gone out there and pulled boulders around and flipped them over, and just vandalized these sites because they don't see, these sites aren't sacred to them. All they want is the treasure.
A lot of symbols, we don't know what they mean. Of course, a lot of this is speculation. There are wings over here, there are half moons, there's hearts, there's lines and dots, and they all indicate certain things, well, to the Spanish, and like I said, there's a lot of Indian stuff incorporated here also.
White man came here, 1800s. You see these are ancient. This is real stuff. The ancient people made this whole structure thousands of years ago. When the white man came here, he did this. He put bricks on top of what was already here. So the pavilion you saw was on top of an ancient curative spring, an ancient holy spring. You have pilgrimages coming from all over North America, perhaps even South America, coming here to experience the curative powers of this water, to experience the curative powers of this temple. And
This is the essence of it all.
Judge John C. Bowden, who now owned the Springs property, believed firsthand the beneficial value of the water and shared it through the Bowden Lithia water bottling operation. Taking the waters was a prescription to good health according to physicians and patients alike. Atlanta businessman James C. Watson became ill while visiting his mother in Douglasville. He attributed his speedy recovery to the salt spring water. Along with wealthy Atlanta resident and financier Edwin W. Marsh, Watson purchased 700 acres, including the springs, to develop a health resort. Touted to be 50 years ahead of its time, the Sweetwater Park Hotel opened amid great public fanfare on July 4, 1888. The hotel's reported building cost was $250,000. Newspaper accounts promoted the ultra-modern 250-room hotel, complete with electricity, indoor plumbing in every room, and the first telephone intercom system in Georgia. Visitors enjoyed fine dining and exquisite luxury and modern entertainment. Sun parlors, a billiard room, and even a resident physician made the Sweetwater a complete package.
My dear Edna, I am visiting the most wonderful place. My doctor recommended I come here for the Springs water, and I tell you, I am feeling better. I met the writer Joel C. Harris. He too is here for the water treatments. The Sweetwater Park's exquisite luxury is the finest around. Evening readings by professors from the Piedmont Chautauqua have been most enlightening. I am wondering if I can ever leave this place. Do think of joining me. The train is nonstop from New York. Yours truly, Constance Blair.
Great bands like John Philip Sousa entertained guests in the open ballroom on the top floor with its 4 beautiful views: Kennesaw Mountain to the north, the south, the ruins of the old Civil War mill on Sweetwater Shoals, the east, Atlanta skyline, and to the west, the Piedmont Chautauqua.
These porches went around 3 sides of the building. And someone told me one time how many white rocking chairs they had around that thing. It was hundreds. Office area, lobby area. And I mean, look at the structure. That's
It's really
pretty,
gorgeous.
pretty fancy. Here's the dance hall, or the ballroom. And they had of course, a band area where they played music. And this is just part of the dining room. The dining room, they said it would seat 300 to 500 people. Come down to the drawing room and talk, and all this down through here, they had clapboards and stuff made out of curly pine and mahogany look.
The Sweetwater Park Hotel kept plenty of the Lithia mineral water on hand for guests to sample and enjoy. Its beneficial elements were well promoted in the hotel's literature, especially after the official stamp of approval and recommendation from noted physicians of the day. Found to contain a natural alkaline, the mineral-rich water became increasingly important treatment for a host of ailments such as arthritis, Bright's disease, eczema, inflammation of the prostate gland, and the bladder. The hotel's famous Lithia vapor baths included electric massage and mineral baths. The marble pavilion constructed over the main spring featured a glass dome. Visitors could see the cascading water flowing from the granite below the Earth's surface. Henry Grady, Atlanta statesman and editor of the Atlanta Constitution, followed Watson and Marsh's lead and looked west for opportunity. The Piedmont Chautauqua opened in 1888. Grady's pet project, a summer college meant to bring education to the rural masses. Promoted as the entertainment center of the South, the arabesque structure was unusual, with its domed amphitheater and large reflecting pond. In no time, the Sweetwater was the fashionable place, all 45 minutes from Atlanta via 5 daily trains, non-stop from New York. Guests had easy access to the hotel. The dummy line, the Little Anna, ran from the Austell Depot to and from the hotel. Public demand for the miracle water soon made the Sweetwater Park Hotel a watering place in the South, drawing large crowds and celebrity visitors from across the United States and abroad. Other famous guests include wealthy northern millionaires, southern poets and writers, and 5 presidents. Atlanta Constitution journalist Joel Chandler Harris, better known for his Uncle Remus stories, extolled the virtues of the Lithia water, himself a frequent guest of the Sweetwater Park Hotel. By 1887, Salt Springs was a bustle of activity. The Marietta Daily Journal reported continuous visitors to the springs, especially after railroad improvements and more train cars on the tracks. A chance to own seasonal homes near the springs, buyers attended an auction for 200 lots between the hotel grounds and the Chautauqua. Grady's sudden death on January 2, 1890, at the early age of 39, put an end to the Chautauqua dream. The Grand Sweetwater Park, too, met an untimely demise when the hotel burned to the ground on the morning of January 12, 1912. Mystery haunts the Sweetwater. Supposedly, a foreign woman arrived at the hotel, intending to live out her days. She brought along her personal maid and a vault filled with treasures that required the strength of 4 men. The woman refused to leave her vault and had to be forcibly removed from the burning hotel. When the fire was finally put out, the lady, her maid, and the vault were never seen again. However, newspaper accounts reported that the hotel was not occupied at that time. Today, a thriving community now occupies that same site. The hotel and Summer College, faded memories.
Beyond the springs, on the banks of the Sweetwater Creek, sits a structure of failing brick and mortar, the site of another mystery. The factual account of some 200 or more people who disappeared from their mill town called New Manchester, caught in the crossfire of Civil War. Built in 1842, Sweetwater Manchester Mill, or Sweetwater Factory, was the earliest known industry in the area. As the waters rushed over its magnificent wheel, it turned with enough force to power 200 machines, spinning pounds and pounds of cotton into bundles of cloth. During the war, the prosperous mill began producing textiles for the Confederate Army. On July 2, 1864, Major General Schofield took the Sweetwater Creek Bridge at Sweetwater Town and the factory at the Shoals. The mill was set on fire, and the townspeople were taken forcibly to Marietta. It is reported that Sherman requested some of the famous Lithia water while his troops camped in the area.
Though the cascading waters still flow from the Earth's surface, the 4-foot-high masonry walls are all that remains of the original structure of the lavish marble pavilion. Today, the Bottled Water Company is owned and operated by Lithia Springs local historian Galeta James. The business office is in the house that was once the medical office of Dr. Christopher Columbus Garrett, resident physician of the Sweetwater Park Hotel.
Water from the springs has been bottled beginning in the 1880s, continuing up until in the 1940s prior to World War II. It was bottled and distributed. Actually, the public could come and bring their jugs and fill their jugs. We bought the springs in 1983. The corporation, Lithia Springs Water Company, Incorporated. We're going to revive we've been closed for several years. We're in the process of reincorporating under the name Lithia Mineral Springs.
The newly discovered archaeological wonder at the springs, an ancient water temple, has waited millenniums for its doorway to be opened.
It's truly remarkable that such a place exists. It's truly remarkable that we're in the year 2006, and here we are discovering probably the most significant archaeological discovery of modern times, right here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Symbols and artifacts verify that Native American cultures lived here long before the Spanish conquistadors cut a trail looking for gold and other valuable minerals through this North Georgia region, and longer still before men like John Bowden left their marks in other ways. Discovery of an ancient tool provides proof that these people were highly civilized and were using superior means to work the rocks. What sort of construction was being done will most likely always remain an archaeological mystery, but what it does prove
is that the people who worked the stone and formed the apparent fortress and temple were highly advanced, civilized people. An ancient water temple museum has been planned for the site, which will exhibit artifacts discovered there. The nonprofit organization plans to use donated funds to restore the glory and wonder of such a magical place, and to continue extensive archaeological research to try and understand more about the people who came before. The hope and desire is that others will join in preserving and protecting this beautiful and tranquil site.
And the way we search through the ages for its splendor is through excavating this enormous temple.
It will take thousands of man-hours to bring the temple back to its ancient glory, and even then, it will only be a snapshot of what it once was.
The water still nourishes today. Taking the waters retains its popularity.